It's the most overrated conversation ever had. Oh, Kirby, why do we do this? Kirby Smart thinks that the decision between 8 and 9 games is the most overrated conversation we've ever had. I can assure you had far more overrated conversations than this. I'm not sure why. I mean, I think he's just tired of hearing about it, but he's incorrect with his opinion about um, that this is an overrated conversation. This is one of the most important conversations the SEC is going to have. Um, one of the most important they're going to have this decade. And when you start, and just to rewind back in 1990, the conference invited South Carolina and Arkansas in, and when they did that, that meant that 1991 was the final season that the league would play a 6 game rotating schedule, however you want to describe it, to determine the conference champion. And very rarely, frankly, more often than not, there was not a single champion. I would say maybe it was 50% of the time. I don't know about that, but like in 1981, Alabama and Georgia were both conference champions. They didn't play each other, so those days are gone. And in 1992, obviously, the divisions occurred. You split the East and West, and although Vanderbilt is west of Auburn, they were in there with the East. Go to an 8 game schedule. You go 5-3 or whatever it was, 5-2-1 at the time. I can't remember. I think it was 5-2-1 because Georgia played Ole Miss and Auburn, and then rotated the other teams. But that was a simpler time. That's when you played 12. You had 12 teams in the school in the league. Since then, we've been on fast forward. I mean, every decade since, we've seen the league add teams, and that has made the league more complicated, frankly. So this discussion of going 8 to 9 games is about the future of this league, and what's going to happen is it's going to go to 9. The part that Kirby is not acknowledging is the nuance of it all. I mean, this is where football coach, enter the name of any football coach, doesn't have to be Kirby, but in this case it is. They're only worried about their particular situation. They're worried about playing their football, and he says 4 years, every 4 years you'll play everybody home and away. I mean, that's correct, but it does matter whether you're going to go to an 8 or a 9 game schedule. You're playing an extra SEC game. That matters for all the fans. It matters for the athletic directors. It matters for your revenue, in theory. It matters for your revenue for sure, because if you're playing an extra SEC game, that's more revenue for your ticket every year, or every other year, I should say. So there's a lot to be worked out. So much of Georgia, I have to say, Georgia's not like a lot of other schools. And they, Georgia, Florida, they've got a lot in common. They play the neutral site game. They have an in-state, out-of-conference rival that ends the season. But most everybody else does not have that. I mean, actually, nobody else has that. Not in the whole country, because Oklahoma, Texas, they traditionally end their seasons with in-state, in-conference foes. That's not the case with Georgia and the Gators. So Georgia has a lot settled on their schedule. Alabama doesn't. Tennessee does not. And if you're going to a 9 game schedule, forget the revenue for a second, okay? Because that may not be there for the next, say, 3 years or something like that. Forget the revenue. And by the way, people thinking that Clemson and Florida State or Miami, they're not coming in the SEC. There's no money. Like, they're not going to pay these new guys. They're not bringing it. This is the most hilarious thing ever these days, by the way. But forget the money, which is the whole point of this, by the way. But forget the money. If you're playing an extra SEC game, where would it be played? Would Georgia? I mean, Georgia would always have 4 home games. I don't know that they would ever have 5. I mean, I'd have to do the math and all this. That's why it's not an overrated conversation. I'm sorry you're tired of it. That's your problem. Hey, pick up our 2023 preview. Our friends at Red Zone have got it. Same thing with Double Dogs. You pick up Double Dogs and you get the preview for free. I know he gets aggravated with these things. I get aggravated with things, but this is not the most overrated conversation we've ever had. The most overrated conversation we've ever had, in my opinion, is NIL or the transfer portal or people's feelings getting hurt about all those things. This is just what it is. And, these guys don't, by the way, I don't know, like, I'm not aware that these coaches are required to talk. I think they just do it to kind of appease media that week. They didn't used to do it at all, I remember. But they kind of come down there and do their thing. And now, Kirby's going to be in camp mode here from here on out in June. But it really is an important conversation. The difference between playing 8 and 9 means the difference in it's not about are you playing everybody. I mean, if that's the criticism of what we've been going through, hey, I think we all know how I feel about Georgia playing Missouri every year and how it's probably the dumbest thing ever. I mean, that's like just saying, hey, Kansas State's in the league now and Georgia's going to go play in Manhattan every other year. Or, hey, listen, Boston College is coming in the SEC and it's going to be a lot of fun. You get to go to Boston every other year. Let me keep going with this because this is fun. Hey, we really think Colorado State's a great fit for the SEC. We're going to put them in the SEC East for a decade, and they're just going to kind of not matter, but you will have to travel out there, every other year, whatever. And, North Dakota State's coming into the SEC. No one cares about Missouri. They never have. They are irrelevant, but they are a part of this. Thank God we're moving to a different thing because I can tell you as a person who's been to Missouri way too many times that there's no reason to go back out there for a football game, period. I mean, they should give Georgia – they want to make Georgia play at A&M like 3 times in a row. I would gladly – I say that before going to College Station. I would gladly swap out that Missouri game, but – you're going to get to see Georgia go to play at College Station. That they haven't gone out there is insane. That they play Alabama twice a decade? Twice a decade in the regular season. It's asinine. I mean, they played Alabama. They have played Alabama since the year 2010. They have played them double the times in non-regular season as they have in regular season. We're talking about 2 legacy programs in this league. So if that's happening with Georgia and Alabama, that means it's happening with Georgia and LSU. That means it's happening with Georgia and Ole Miss. Or, it's just you don't want to go too far away from what you've always been or you're not going to be yourself. And I think that's one, part of all of this that's got to be, hopefully we are returning to the mean a little bit here because people, and I would love, maybe I'll get a text, I doubt it, but for the reaction that people from Georgia folks and higher ups saying, well, most overrated conversation Kirby ever had. Well, why are you always triggered about Missouri? Because I got to pay to go out there, and it's worthless. What, to go watch them destroy Missouri again? I mean, like, think about all those games, y'all. They beat them by 21 and 12. They beat them 30-something to nothing in 14. 16 was a crazy game, no doubt. 18, they just, routined them. I was out there in 20. It was me and Roddy and Claude and Chris Lakos. That was it. There were 4 people from Georgia there. 2 people from the university. And me freezing to death and hearing people talk about Coastal Carolina being a legit playoff. Get out of here with all this stupidity. And then 2022, I can't even remember the games. 2022 Missouri. Oh, they saved themselves. Okay, there you go. So we got to get back to what's paying the bills, and that's Georgia and Alabama, LSU and Georgia, LSU playing Tennessee, Florida, and in the future Texas. I mean, let's and I think it does matter if you're doing 8 to 9. You know why it matters? Kirby doesn't care about anything. He obviously does not care about tradition, because he wouldn't be talking about moving the Florida game. He's essentially saying, I don't care if we play Auburn every year. It's irrelevant to me. And yeah, he loves beating Auburn. That game would be gone. And there's only so many years. This is why it's not the most overrated conversation. There's only so many years Georgia can drag this thing out and play Auburn every year if they're going 8 games. There's no mathematical way those two teams continue to play. And there's something to be said. There's something to be said for playing what you've always played. There's something for change too. That's what Missouri's for. That's why we're wasting our time going out there, right? I mean, it's not an overrated conversation, because it is a very relevant and important conversation. I'm about to sneeze, so I'm going to get off here.